In my administration, I will focus on trying to make the environment better for small business, for entrepreneurs, for innovators, for job creators, small businesses, big businesses, middle-sized businesses. Democrats say they like a strong economy. They just don't like business very much.
That was Mitt Romney earlier today courting businesswomen in Virginia. Later in the day, he'll meet with the state's governor, Bob McDonnell. Romney's trip comes as an upcoming New York Times Magazine article examines a new book by one of Romney's former business partners that claims income inequality is great for the economy. Hugo?
Yeah.
It's your magazine.
Well, we're hoping a lot of people talk about it.
It is a fascinating article focused on Romney's former colleague, Edward Conard,
Yep.
who makes the case that income inequality is a sign the economy is working. The super rich invest their money, and it's not just trickling down to the 99%, but he makes the case that for every dollar an investor gets, the public gets up to $20 in value, and says...
Now, he wants it known, because he's been bothering us about this particular fact, it's up to 20 to 1.
Okay.
The more conventional number that most economists use is 5 to 1, and Ed has expanded that figure a little bit. He says up to 20 to 1, but it's probably somewhere between 5 and 20 if it's above 5.
But it's the idea that, I thought this example, you know, insofar as it illustrated the point, Google founder Sergey Brin might be very rich, but the world is far richer than he is because of Google.
Right. Well, that's the crux of the argument. The other part that
easy to say that when you're a billionaire, but okay, keep going.
Well, I don't know that he's a billionaire, but he'd like to be one. The crux of the argument is that the improvements in the U.S. economy depend on risk taking, and that there's a lot of highly educated, complacent people in the United States who are really not taking enough risks. And the answer to that, Ed Conard argues, is to increase the rewards for success. It's kind of like he uses he compares it to like the lottery. You know, like when the lottery jackpots get huge, what happens? A whole lot of people who never play suddenly start. And I mean, that's obviously going to strike a lot of people as very simplistic. Ed spent the entire book writing about this, supporting it with a lot of research, and it's interesting.
One fact we should note about Ed Conard is he was the person who made the $1 million donation to Mitt Romney's super PAC through a company that was essentially a shell company called
That is correct.
Fan.
So that he could make the donation.
It has nothing to do whatsoever with his book or what you
It is mentioned in the story.
If we talk about Mitt Romney's views on income inequality and sort of his idea about the top 1% or 0.1%, this, I think, is illuminating. The New York Times Magazine, Hugo's magazine, says, in the piece it says, "Are Conard's views the uncensored, impolitic version of the man he hopes will be president? The Romney campaign said they wouldn't comment in any way on unintended consequences," that's the book, "and Conard wouldn't share with me anything about his private conversations with his old friend." Romney economic advisor Glenn Hubbard said only that at a broad level, Romney and Conard share beliefs about innovation and growth and responsible risk-taking.
You know, the problem, Hugo and I were talking about this before, I have a couple problems with this argument. Number one, I think part of the problem in business in America is that the focus has been shifted to how do we make money. That's what Bain was about, not how do we create industry, how do we make things, how do we start a new industry that will create more jobs. Instead, it's how do I, you know, what tax loopholes can I make, how can, I mean, even if you look at the corporate profits now, why are they so high? They're high because they're trying to do more with less. They're not hiring people. So I don't totally buy that argument about risk-taking. Secondly, this whole argument about, oh, rising tide lifts all boats hides the disparity between the 1% and the lowest of the 99%. And also, it means you're not disaggregating the data to look at what is life really like for people in the 99%. I would challenge him, go live in Lima, Ohio for a month, working a minimum wage job, and see if you still think it's all good for the 1% to just let it trickle down.
And if the wealth is sort of, you know, all gathered, aggregated at the top 1%, there's the thesis, and it's explained in the story, that it makes it harder for other people to have a chance.
Of course.
Fundamentally, they rig the political system and perhaps the market system in a way that no one else can get a piece of the pie.
But look at these people you're talking about. The people who invented Google, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. These people were not the 1%. They were vastly the 99%. In fact, they've been the lower 99%, and they became the 1%. I was always taught that the difference between the haves and the have-nots are the people the difference between the dids and the did-nots.
But that presumes that everybody has the same opportunity to make good choices,
well,
to then put themselves
we try
in
to
that
do that, but what's your solution? I mean, if people should be able to keep the fruits of their labor, and they should pay a fair amount of taxes, they shouldn't pay all the taxes.
I think we're talking about a fair and starting chance here, and I think education is one of those areas where there used to be bipartisan agreement that, hey, this gets everybody off the starting blocks at the same time, or at least gives everybody some semblance
And we can agree with that, but certainly Bill Gates didn't have an education. Steve Jobs didn't have an education.
But you know what Bill Gates' problem is? I don't think a Bill Gates or a Steve Jobs are possible in this kind of climate. I think part of the reason that they are what they are
they're not possible in this kind of climate? I'd say in this kind of climate they're more possible than ever.
A guy with a random idea to get the kind of funding to build that kind of company?
In New York City, there's tons of companies getting funding for all kinds of crazy ideas. I mean, one of them will turn out to be the next Apple.
I don't. There are singular Apples and singular Facebooks, but as a broad plan for the American economy, I don't know. Saying that everybody is going to become Steve Jobs seems a little bit.
I don't think anyone thinks that.
One thing, can I ask you a question, because I actually have yet to see the magazine piece. But what was his hope in writing the book now? I mean, it's hard for me to see how this is at all helpful for Mitt Romney. In all seriousness.
I think that's a good question. I think he'll be. I don't know the answer to it, but I do think that's a fair question. I think Ed will be around doing interviews, and that's a good question.
I'll ask him.
But if the premise was, would that we could all be millionaires and have, shell companies and offshore accounts, that's great. But that's not the message that I feel like we get. It's good for up here and you guys to be down there. It's not. Let's create more opportunities.
I will say I don't think that's his argument. I understand that someone could see it that way, but I don't think that's what he's saying. He's not saying protect the rich at all costs. He's saying create more opportunities for people to get rich.
Certainly, this is stuff that Mitt Romney will be tackling on the campaign trail. Coming up, we're going to talk about the resignation of Romney.